Learning first is the notion that you're really trying to drive as much learning into people's minds as possible. And so what happens in an organization is out here in the performance world, let's say business leadership is asking for a training. And it'll ask the learning organization, can you please get me a training? Training organization says, hey, can you get me some subject matter expertise? Well, we don't really have time. So you got to use source material, you build a course, you run people through it, and then you send people back to the front lines, back into doing what they're supposed to do in the business. The problem is what happens in that gap between those two organizations is very much is what's been described by Renee and Maria Elena and So Young, which is that there's a big thrust of learning that happens, and then it falls right out of your head, per the Ebbinghaus-Forgetting curve that's been cited here. And you're going to retain something to the tune of 20% of that. That's what happens in the gap between the end of a learning course and what you're expected to do on the front lines of your life and your work. And what's worse is that because these are such different organizations, there's no return on learning that's expected and or measured at all. So you have no idea if that spike in learning that you got actually made a difference. Well, when you're using the performance first paradigm, you can keep people coming back, and it is the micro-learning format that allows you to do that. You get people to come back to it over and over and over again so that you can have learning retention at 90% or even better. Now, that's not performance, but it's a massive first step towards performance. And with enough repetition, you can build a bridge between training and performance. And what I'll show you is that it's not only the bridge, but it's actual measurable return on learning that can be measured. Like we're showing that performance is done. Now, to do that at scale, you got to automate this. You have, and to be able to automate it and capture data on it, you have to draw a map so that you can kind of set it and forget it. To be able to do that, you got to have both the performance organization and the training organization working together. And that doesn't always happen very well or often. So what we brought it to bear is what we call a goal design. It's a map, effectively, that uses a methodology that we proved out through clinical trials called ASK. And it stands for Attitudes, Skills, and Knowledge, ASK. By focusing on the attitudes especially, you're able to make a gateway for skills and knowledge to be adopted in the flow of work. But it takes a lot of repetition to do that, and that's the key. How do you get repetition into a busy person's life? And then more importantly, maybe, how do you keep the leaders in the performance organization and the training organization actually working together over time in real time, like over weeks and months? Usually they just throw over a course request and training throws back the course. The map gives you a chance with very little time taken away from leadership to just come back like for a half hour every week or a couple of hours every month to see how the map is being fulfilled. Like, our attitudes being shifted, our skill and knowledge habits being formed. Now, again, at scale, the only way to get there is you got to add one more layer to this, and that is governance. To be able to get across multiple geographies and around the world, and you've got to be able to deploy, analyze the data, remediate wherever there are weaknesses. And again, that is a collaborative effort that happens between leaders in the performance side and leaders in the training organization. So you got to have an automated system that makes that drag and drop simple to look at the data and take actions on it. So Ringarang, it's the name of the software. The reason that we built it was to create some automation around this so you could effectively scale what we're calling the performance first paradigm, where it's not about learning first, trying to get all this learning into people's lives. It's about reverse engineering what does performance mean to the organization and making sure that that process is automated. So in summary, what you got here in the learning first organization, unfortunately, is a lot of disempowerment that doesn't get talked about much. It's people trying to learn, wanting to learn coming out of training, organization wanting people to learn, but in fact, their brains won't do it, not in this modality. And if you're not measuring the returns on learning to see if it actually made it into your day-to-day life and you're applying it and turning it into behaviors, then there's no actual return on learning and no return on investment. There's a lot of risk of failure there. So taking the mystery out of it, performance first allows for empowerment, where the learning organization and the performance, meaning the business leaders, are working together in real time with the learners, measuring that it actually made a difference in the organization, measuring that there's performance.